On Saturday, President Trump is expected to campaign in Georgia on behalf of Republican incumbent Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. Georgia Republicans are trying to mobilize voters ahead of two January Senate runoff elections that will determine which party controls the chamber. There are concerns the president's repeated attacks on the electoral process could depress turnout. Advisors to Donald Trump Jr. are reportedly launching a super PAC to help energize Republicans. The Save the U.S. Senate PAC will begin airing ads featuring the president's son on conservative TV and radio stations across Georgia this week. At a campaign stop just north of Atlanta on Saturday, Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel was interrupted with questions from people skeptical about ballots they cast earlier in November.
How are we going to give money and work when it's already decided?
It's not decided. This is the key.
No.
It's not decided. If you lose your faith and you don't vote and people walk away, that will decide it. So we have to work hard. Trust us, we're fighting. We're looking at every legal avenue.
Get that word out because people are losing their.
Greg Bluestein is a political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and joins me now. Greg, nice to see you again. Well, it would make sense that President Trump's supporters would have concerns about voting in the upcoming election since the president claims their votes may not have counted in November. So how are the RNC and the candidates handling that?
Yeah, I mean, this is what's keeping Republicans in Georgia up at night. They're worried that all of Donald Trump's talk about a rigged vote, about fraudulent voter fraud, about voter irregularities is seeping down into the base, and that even if, let's say, 5–10% of his loyal supporters decide not to vote in January 5th runoffs, that it could cost Republicans control of the Senate. So they're trying to navigate a really fine line here by, in some sense, echoing President Trump's concerns about voter problems, but at the same time telling their base to come back out and vote for control of the Senate. They're calling it basically a firewall for Republicans.
Well, as we mentioned, President Trump is expected to visit Georgia on Saturday. It will be his first major public event since losing his re-election bid. You've written about so-called Trump-fatigued voters in Georgia. It's really interesting. At this point, what does an appearance from the president do for Republicans?
Well, it sends the message to Republicans that they should turn out, that they should rally, that they should be reanimated, re-energized ahead of this January 5th runoff. But the concern for the campaigns is they're worried that if the president spends more time talking about his own grievances and not about Kelly Loeffler or Senator Perdue's campaigns for re-election, that it could do more damage than good. We'll see if that happens, but we expect him to at least devote part of his speech towards their campaigns and not towards his own.
So on Monday, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger announced an investigation into alleged third-party groups trying to register voters outside of the state ahead of the Senate runoffs. Will any of these investigations change the results of the presidential election in Georgia? And what's the impact on confidence in the state's voting system?
Well, we don't expect these investigations to have any sort of impact on the outcome of the race. We're in the middle of a third recount, a second recount, but a third count overall. And the votes have already been certified, and state election officials do not expect to say that the outcome, which is President-elect Joe Biden's victory in Georgia, will not change. But at the same time, these investigations, which Democrats say are unnecessary and unwarranted, but these investigations highlight Republican concerns really since Andrew Yang, the former presidential candidate, announced that he was moving to Georgia and encouraged his supporters, the Yang gang, to follow him. Republicans have basically accused Democrats of moving to Georgia to want to try to sway the vote. There's no evidence of that happening. There's no evidence of people moving here just to register to vote and then leaving. And of course, that's illegal under Georgia law. But still, this sort of echoes Republican concerns that Democrats are trying to game the system.
Well, earlier today, President Trump called on Georgia Governor Brian Kemp to use emergency powers to overrule Secretary Raffensperger on the signature verification process. He also called Kemp an enemy of the people and said he was ashamed of endorsing him in 2018. How is the governor responding, and are any Republicans coming to his defense?
Yeah, well, first of all, there are no emergency powers the governor can use to overrule the outcome of the election. And he said so. He said as much himself. The state law requires him to certify the results of the voter certification. Once Brad Raffensperger certified the vote, it's up to the governor to certify that the 16 Georgia electors go to the Democratic Party, which is what he did. And he said he had no option but to do so. He was just following the letter of the law. After the president stepped up his attacks on Governor Kemp over the weekend, saying, as you mentioned, that he was ashamed to have endorsed him back in 2018 and called on him to use these non-existent powers, the governor repeated that he has no authority to intervene under state law into a Georgia election. He just doesn't have that right or that power. So the president is calling on him to do something he just cannot do, even if he wanted to, and we have no indication that he wants to.
Well, at a press conference this afternoon, Democrat Jon Ossoff criticized Republican Senator David Perdue over a series of stock transactions that he made early on in the pandemic. Let's play some of that.
Our senator, while he's been blocking desperately needed financial relief for ordinary working people here in Georgia and for businesses, has been using his office to enrich himself. Senator Perdue has been lying to the public and to you, members of the press, for the last year about his financial misconduct. Because Senator Perdue has repeatedly claimed that he doesn't control his day-to-day stock trades. But federal agents secured banking records which revealed that Senator Perdue did, in fact, personally instruct stock trading.
Now, Ossoff gained traction in the polls by attacking Senator Perdue on his financials. What's behind these attacks, and is there any evidence that Perdue was involved in anything unethical or illegal?
Yeah, this has been a key part of the Democratic argument in Georgia, not just for Jon Ossoff, but also for Reverend Raphael Warnock. They've been accusing their opponents of gaming the system, of personally profiting off of the pandemic. And in this case, of what Jon Ossoff was talking about was a New York Times report that came out on Wednesday that showed that David Perdue made a call after he received an email from an executive with an Atlanta-based financial company, that he made a call to his stock advisor and encouraged him and directed him, I should say, to sell at least $1 million worth of stock in that company. He had been telling the press for most of the last year that he had no direct input. He had no direct involvement, that he left these stock trades up to his advisors. Although the New York Times report showed that he had much more of a direct say in where these stocks went. His advisor, his campaign still says that it was a broader decision. It was not that he was not getting involved in this one only because it involved so much money, that it just was a coincidence that he got involved after he got this email. And federal investigators probed into this and determined there was not enough to make a criminal case out of it. So no charges were brought and the case was closed. But certainly, as you could hear from Jon Ossoff, he's going to make this a main campaign issue through January 5th.
All right, Greg Bluestein. Greg, always great to have you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.